morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome in from across the continent today for another exciting Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants broadcast. If you're joining us for the first time today, and some of you are, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. And you're catching us on an exciting day. Number one, we just wrapped up our Big World Oceans Week. We did 30 programs last week. It was insane. We dealt with people who lived on the bottom of the ocean, people who rowed across the Pacific, people who've been to the bottom of every ocean. It was crazy. You can catch all those programs on our YouTube channel. So much to explore and discover there. Now, a few weeks back, we just wrapped up our epic cross-Canada virtual road trip in conjunction with the amazing folks at Parks Canada and Canadian Geographic. And when we wrapped up one of our last broadcasts, Amber, who's joining us in just a second, said, why don't we do a live puffin walk? And I mean, for me, that is like the coolest thing ever. So today, we are joining her live on the Perroquets in a puffin paradise, braving the wind and the rain. The ship barely even got them there today to take you in a little bit of a lighthouse adventure, a puffin adventure, and more. I hope you guys are as pumped as I am. I wish I was there in person. And without further ado, Amber Gibson, thank you so much for joining us today. And welcome to the park.
Thank you so much, Jesse. Hello, everyone. My name is Amber Gibson. I work here for Parks Canada at the beautiful, incredible Mingan Archipelago National Park Reserve. And I'm joining you live right now from Perroquets. Now, behind me, you might be hearing some little whoo in the background. And if you do hear that during our broadcast, those are actually seals. We passed this morning a couple hundred seals that were hauled out on one of the islands that's directly behind me. So today we're doing a puffin walk. We are on Perroquets, which is a very, very small island in the archipelago. It's only about 500 meters long and it's very, very, very short. So we're going to be able to see the entire island today. And as we go down our cliffs, to find those puffins, I want to show you something else that we have here on the islands. We don't just have puffins and amazing seabirds here on Perroquets, it's also home to a pretty incredible lighthouse and lighthouse station. So this lighthouse here was built in 1878, and it's been here for, well, going on 150 years now. And why would we put a lighthouse here? Well, not too far away from here, about 5 kilometers on the North Shore, there's a village. And where you have villages, you've got more maritime traffic and a need to be able to control that maritime traffic and to help boats navigate. So we have this lighthouse station, the building that you see behind me. Well, on this side right here, that was the lighthouse station's assistance house. And then even to the other side right here, this was the lighthouse attendant's house. So he would live here for a good part of the year with his entire family, completely isolated from the rest of the world. He'd be responsible for all of his food, all of his water. They wouldn't have fresh water available, so they'd even have to be drinking rainwater. Now, why am I talking about this? Well, it's hard to miss when we're here on Perroquets. And they had to share this island with those puffins. Now, behind me, right now, you're going to see some birds swooping by. Woo! He came really close to my head. Those ones did too. They're moving really, really fast. I'm going to go ahead and switch my camera here so you can see the other side. Am I able to do that, Jesse? I think so.
You should be able to do. It's always the most fraught part, always kind of exciting to switch a camera out. So play around with it for a second. I'll put you in the background as we do that, just to give you a second to sort that out. But what a cool island. It's so neat to be outdoors. It's one of the first times we've ever actually been outdoors in the east coast of Canada. We've done a bunch of Alberta broadcasts in BC with our folks at Parks Canada, but really special to get to go outside in Quebec. For those who want to know the spelling, Perroquet is below. It's on our first bio for the program as well. So just to check that out if you want to look it up after the fact. Amber, it looks like it's giving you trouble. The camera's kind of iffy. That's okay. Worst case, we can just turn the camera around and that will work.
I won't be able to show you to see what I'm showing you necessarily, but yeah. Let's see if we can get some of these guys to fly by. Oh, there's some right behind me. Yep. The thing right here are bank swallows, and they're actually an endangered species of bird. So we'll keep going down the cliff here. The lower we get, right now we're actually on top of the plateau of Perroquets. So as we go down further towards the water's edge, there's these large cliffs that border each side of the island, and that's where the puffins and the marine birds are going to dig out their nests with their beaks, and they're going to lay their eggs. So we actually, to be able to go see them best, we're going to go down to the side of the cliffs. Go try and find some of those puffins. Now, coming in this morning, we saw probably close to 200 that were on the water. But as the tide's coming in right now, we should be able to see them coming back, hopefully even with some fish in their mouth. Jesse, you'll be happy to hear that.
I sure will. I was saying to Amber before the broadcast that I was 20 years old when I first saw a picture of a puffin without the fish in its mouth, sort of an iconic image of them. And for years, I thought that was literally just like a beardy thing that they had. And no, it's just them eating. They look like a normal bird. They got a full beak and everything. So very cool to have the chance to see them. This is quite as you said, little island. So how big is the eel again, Amber?
I believe it's a kilometer, 1.5 square kilometers, something like that. It's very small.
Can you see the edge on every side of you? Like, I know that sounds goofy, but you can see ocean in every direction from the highest point?
Pretty much. If I back up just a little bit here. So right behind that lighthouse is one edge. Right behind me is another edge. And then right over that hill is the other edge. And then behind me on this side, we can see the other edge of the island. So we're really going from one edge to the other today.
It's our first ever full island traverse in the history of exploring by the seat of your pants.
And it might be a little bit hard to hear me right now because the wind has picked up a little bit and it started to rain again. So hopefully you can still hear me.
We appreciate your effort grieving all travail. Now, you said to me before we went live, too, that you've got 7 tourists with you today. It's the beginning of sort of visitor season. How many people come to visit the island every year?
Oh, my goodness. So quite a few. There's at least 3 trips per day. And on top of that, in that lighthouse that we passed a little bit earlier on, you can come and stay there now. It's no longer a functional lighthouse. So now it's acting as a bed and breakfast. So you can actually stay overnight on this island with puffins. And you stay and sleep either in the lighthouse keeper's house or his assistant's house.
Well, I'm booking my Airbnb immediately. That sounds pretty cool. And I want to note for our kids, too, because just as a contextual thing, when I grew up in Ontario, we got a lot of Ontario classes today. Puffins were like an impossibly romantic and exciting bird to me. It was like something that I would never thought that I would see. And there are tons of them on Canada's East Coast. You do not need to go to Ireland or Norway or Iceland or anything else to see puffins. We've got hordes of them on our maritime provinces from the St. Lawrence out to Newfoundland, where I am now. And it's so exciting to get to see these groupings of tens, if not hundreds of thousands of birds together, all fishing and flying off the coast. It's quite a magnificent experience if anyone ever gets the chance. Sometimes it's on whale watching tours in Quebec, Nova Scotia, Newfoundland that you'll see these birds. So I hope everybody gets that chance. Amber, it looks like we're down by the beach now. Very exciting.
Yes, I'm going down towards the edge of the cliff right now. I just have to watch my step because it's quite rocky. And I completely agree with you, Jesse. I also am an Ontario kid. I grew up in Toronto. So coming and working here and living here, puffins were very romantic and something that I thought we didn't have in Canada. I didn't know that we had them in Canada before coming to live on the East Coast. So it's a huge privilege to be able to see them and work with them so regularly. All right, I'm coming up to the edge of the cliff here. It is raining a little bit. Now, the puffins aren't scared of the rain. They're actually pretty well waterproof. And when they are not nesting, they're actually going to be spending most of their lives out on the water. So they're coming here to Île aux Perroquets to lay their eggs. They're coming here to nest with their mate. And then once the baby is hatched and he's ready to go off on its own, well, they're going to go back out. And they'll spend most of the rest of their life on the North Atlantic. So I'm just going to turn around right here. You can see now we're at the base of those cliffs. We just walked down this slope here, and you can even see right about, oh my goodness, I'm not finding my finger because there's too much rain on the screen. You can see a little bit, a little tiny piece of that lighthouse right there. And I'm looking for some puffins. Got a few just over there.
Yeah, we just had a few birds fly right over your head, too. So those the puffins, or do we have other species that are around you as well?
The birds that just flew over my head are bank swallows. So they're also really, really interesting, and I'm really glad I'm seeing so many of them today. This is probably the biggest concentration I've seen in the last 2 years, which is really promising because they're an endangered species. And this is one of the main places in the park that we're going to see them. And they'll also spend a good part of the summer here in the park. We're going to go over to the other side because I'm not seeing any puffins that are super close right now, but what I can do is go up a little bit closer here to show you. I'm not going to go into the den, of course, because we don't want to disturb any of those puffins that are nesting. But right here on the edge of that stone, every single little opening we see in the rock side, that's where those puffins are going to go. And with their big, large orange beak, they're digging into the side of this cliff, and they're making not a nest. We can't say it's a nest. They're nesting, but they're not making a nest because they're not kicking up little pieces of straw or little pieces of plant debris to make a nest like we think of normally. They make more of a den. And so because that reason, they don't need to camouflage their eggs. A lot of the eggs that we'll find in nature are really well camouflaged to where they're going to be laid so that other predators are going to have a really hard time finding them. But puffins, that's not so much the case. So because of that, I actually have a puffin egg here with me. This is a reproduction. It's not a real puffin egg because I wouldn't want to take a real one. This right here is a puffin egg. There we go. It looks really, really similar to a chicken egg.
Which is kind of interesting. Usually when we see bird eggs, they have patterns on them, as you said. They have something to help them blend in. They're a little bigger, a little smaller. That's pretty much exactly a chicken egg, which I wouldn't expect for a bird of a puffin size. Yeah, what's this guy?
This guy right here, this is a common Muir's egg. So you can see that it is a little bit different, a little bit mottled. So that's a cousin of the puffins. But even though they're pretty closely related, their eggs look nothing alike. It's much more pointed. It's quite a bit of a larger egg, and it's got these patterns on it to be able to better camouflage it as compared to the puffin's egg, which aren't exposed outside. Predators are going to have a much harder time finding those eggs. So I'm just going up to the other side of our cliff here, because on the other side too, we also should have some puffins that are nesting there. And it is starting to rain down pretty hard right now, so they might be tucking their heads inside their dens. But with a little bit of luck, hopefully we'll be able to see some flying back to their dens.
Oh, and then when we go to Q&A, if there's a place that you can get in under an awning, we'd love to save you in this one. We did a storm chaser episode as well, but we appreciate your dedication.
I don't mind. I won't melt.
While you're doing this too, I'm going to pull up on a map just for everyone to see and get a sense of where this is in the Canadian context. So let me do that, and we will show you a little bit of where we are on a global scale. We got some Americans today, we got some Canadians, welcome in from across the continent to check out our Mingan Archipelago. So I'll let Amber sort of stroll over to our next place as I pull this up for everyone too. All right. Cool. Okay. So you'll see Newfoundland there on the far right of the picture. That's where I live. I actually live in a town that's listed on that. We've got Quebec there. Anticosti Islands, our big one. New Brunswick is in the bottom of that picture. And if we zoom in right on this little coast, we are going to get to the Mingan Archipelago. So there's the town of Mingan on the Quebec shore. And we will find Amber right now. She is in this area. So there's a little bit of scale so you can take a look at where she is. And Amber, where are you taking us to now in what looks like the world's most torrential downpour?
I'm taking you to the other side of the cliff right here to see if we can't find any puffins coming in and out of their dens. So here we can see the lighthouse all the way up on those cliffs. And those cliffs are about 12 meters high. And even you can see some places where those rocks have come down, have eroded and are falling into the ocean a little bit. Let's go up to the line here. You can see we've got a big white line moving across here. And the reason we have that white line is so that visitors don't go any further past this line, because this area is full of puffins that are nesting. Okay, I am on the lookout. Keep your eyes peeled. They're quite small. They're only about 10 or 11 inches high. And in that gray rock, sometimes they can be pretty camouflage. Keep
Well,
your eyes
what we can
open.
do, what I was going to say is what we can do, Amber, too, is I can head to our classes to get some awesome puffin questions. And then, of course, if we see any and you want to tell us anything that we missed in the questions, we can dive in that way. Does that sound good?
That sounds like a great idea, Jesse.
Amazing. Well, Miss Green's class, I'm going to say hello to you guys in Scarborough. I know your mic's giving you some troubles, but welcome in. Hi, kids. If you want to share some questions in the chat, we'd love to take some from you. I think all our other classes have their mics working. So we're going to go one by one through a little bit of everyone. As Miss Green types that in, YouTubers in Winnipeg, Hamilton too. Thank you so much for joining in there. So we'd love to hear from absolutely everyone over our next 20 minutes or so together. But our grade 2 stars crew, if you guys want to unmute your microphone, I can come to you in a second to do a question. Mr. White's class, you're our first one with a mic on, so I'm going to start with you guys. Come on in if you have any questions for Amber about puffins or her work. Hey, guys.
Hi, a little hesitant and a bit shy this morning. But my wonder was, do puffins keep the same mate for life?
Ooh.
That's an amazing question. And no worries about being shy. I know where you guys are in our prior. I used to live near Ottawa, so very happy you've joined us. Do puffins mate for life? Typically, yes. Once the puffins have chosen their mate, they're going to come back with them every year to lay their one egg together with that mate. Oh, I hope you guys caught that.
Yes,
We've got some
absolutely.
dudes going by. Ooh. So typically they will. However, now when the parents are taking care of that egg, both the female and the male puffin have responsibilities, and they both have to take care of that little baby egg. And so if one parent isn't necessarily pulling their weight in the couple, they can get a divorce and find another mate. So it is not impossible for them to divorce with big quotation marks, but most of the time they will stay together for their lives.
Amazing. And thank you so much for that. I've actually never heard that in a bird context. That's news to me. Very excited. Westview School, we're going to head to you guys. Then I'm going to take everyone from Miss Green's class. Star Crew, if you guys want to unmute your mic, I'll come to you soon. And Miss Lou, I'm coming to you too. Don't worry. Lots of time for Q&A. This is amazing. Hey, Miss Smith. Hi.
What do puffins eat?
Ooh.
Amazing question. So puffins mostly are going to eat small little fish. And I actually saw one a little bit earlier today. He had a little fish in his mouth. And so they don't really eat big fish. It's really small fish for the most part. So like sand lance, herring, capelin, little fishes like that is what they're going to prefer. And what's really cool about their beak is they've actually got a bunch of little hooks in their beak that point backwards so that they can hold multiple fish in their beak at one time. So usually they're going to average around 10, but they can actually go up to many dozens of fish in their mouth at one time if you've got one who's particularly a good hunter.
I'm going to pull up a picture of that in just a second for everyone so you can see what it looks like when I talked about with all the fish in their mouth. But let's head to Miss Green's class. So online, they were sharing a bunch of great questions. Santa wants to know if puffins are related to toucans since they have similar beaks. Anything you can tell us about their relatives?
So they're birds like toucans, but they're not super closely related to toucans. They are also marine birds like toucans, so they've got a lot of things in common with them, but they are not, they're kind of like distant cousins. We can say that. They're like distant cousins of toucans, so they're not closely related.
That's a great question, though. Here's our puffin with all sorts of little silver fish. So you can get a look. I always saw as a boy with just a normal beak. So I was quite surprised to see them in person. Hey, Lynn, I want to head to you guys live. Stars Crew, you don't need to share online. I think your mic should work. So come on in. It's more fun this way. Hello. Come on mute. Tell us.
How many eggs can they lay at once?
Amazing question. They can only lay one egg at a time. So every year they're only going to lay one egg, which is why it's really important for us to protect the habitat that they're nesting in. Because if they lose that one egg, that means that that couple is not going to get a baby. There's not going to be a baby that comes from that couple for that year. So we have to work really hard to protect the spaces where they're coming to nest so that we can hopefully have lots and lots of little puffins flying around.
Fingers crossed. And by the way, before we head to Miss Lou, what are little puffins called? This is one of the great names in the animal kingdom.
You go ahead, Jesse. You want to say it. Go for it.
Pufflings, which is just the best name ever. Pufflings is adorable and fantastic. So there you go. There's your news today. Thank you, Amber. Miss Lou's class, welcome in, Greek Forest. Hi.
Hi. How long do they live?
Woo.
They can live about 20 years. So in ideal conditions, about 20 years. There was one in captivity, I think, that lived into its 30s, but that's really exceptional. In the wild, typically they're going to live around 20 years.
That's still very long for a bird of that size. Birds are really interesting that way. They tend to live longer than comparably sized mammals, something like a squirrel would not live 20 years. So I'm really glad we got that question. Thanks, YouTubers, Miss Provencher, both your questions are answered. So you're going to have to share more with us. We'd love to hear more from you. Dalewood, Miss Clover, how far they can fly and how do they catch the fish?
The first question was, how far can they fly?
Yes.
How far they can fly pretty far. They can fly pretty far, but they do need to rest quite a bit. So in the winter, when they're not nesting, when they're here in the archipelago, they're going to the water, they're getting their food, and usually they're coming back to the nest. But in the wintertime, they're spending it out on the open ocean. So they're used to being in the water pretty much all the time. They can take flight still to go and escape predators, for example, or little things like that. But they can fly pretty far, but still need to rest quite frequently. Now, we don't have a lot of information, which is really, really cool, actually. We don't have a huge amount of information about where exactly they go in the wintertime, but we know that it's out at large in the North Atlantic. Then the second question, Jesse, can you remind me?
Yeah, it's how do they catch the fish? Are they just skimming them off the surface? Are they swimming in and diving to get them? What's the deal?
Amazing question. So usually the fish that they're catching are schooling fish, which means the fish are in schools of large numbers. And what the puffins will do is they'll fly above them and they'll look for them in the water, and then they'll go whoop and just plop down in the water really quickly and try to catch one in their beak. If they're lucky, they'll catch more than one. And I'm going over to the other side to see if I can't see some over here again.
Yeah, as you're going, I just want to note, it almost looks like there's so much rain in you. I can't tell if it's like slightly sleeting or snowing or if it's just rain and you're just mostly water now, but it's very impressive.
I'm turning slowly into water.
Nice, good. Well, as Miss Coburn said, you're a true Canadian, so thank you for
here we go behind us. These guys are the cousins of the puffins. These are razorbills right behind us that are flying by.
I know they're just little black dots for all our audience.
I think we've got some coming over. We've got some flying back. Going over to the edge here.
Yeah, don't go over the edge too fast, though. Okay?
Not over the edge of the cliffs. But again, they're a little bit far out there. But right over there on the water, we've got some puffins that are flying just on the water's edge right here.
Ooh, lucky you. Well, thank you.
We're not super close, but we can still see them. I'm happy.
Thank you for trying to get us all these up-close shots, and we're going to keep going with Q&A for the next few minutes. Miss Green's class asked a great one, so I'm going to bring them up to say hi as I share their question. They wanted to know about Puffin Patrol, if you can share any information you might know about this. And I have a little backdrop information if you don't, but tell us more.
I don't have a huge amount of information about Puffin Patrol. I know what it is, but we don't have Puffin Patrol here in the park because we're so far off the mainland. We don't have a need for a Puffin Patrol. We don't have puffins that we're finding coming into our villages because of the lights. I think that's why they're coming into Newfoundland. So we don't have a Puffin Patrol here because we don't need one. But the Puffin Patrol is really a cool incentive and needed, I believe, isn't it a town in Newfoundland, Jesse?
It sure is, Witless Bay. So I just shared in the YouTube and StreamYard chat for all our class. If you want to see how, if you ever happen to find yourself on the other coast or me in Newfoundland and you want to help get puffins in a situation where we can save them, it's a really, really great program. We've talked about it in some past shows, and I'm so glad we got that question. So thank you for that, Amber. Great Juice Stars crew, yeah, share live, come on in. Hey, Great Juice.
Do puffins have to lay their egg on flat surface?
Yeah.
That's a really good question. It's pretty flat in the inside of their den. So you can kind of imagine it like a little tunnel that they're digging in the side of the cliff. And then at the base of that tunnel, it's almost like a little chamber, a little room that's been dug out for the nest, but also so that the the mom and dad can take turns sitting on that egg. So it has to be big enough for the parents to be in there at the same time. And now the puffins, they don't have any education in construction, so it might not be perfectly level, but it's pretty well done.
Very cool. We're going to take just a few more questions so you can get in out of the hurricane force gale. Mr. White's class, I'm going to head to you guys first if you want to unmute your mic. And no worries if it's just Mr. White sharing a question on behalf of the class, but we'll come to you in case you have any for us. Hey, Aaron Pryor, welcome in. Let's see. Dun, dun, dun,
And just
dun.
on the side here, I've got some puffins coming into the cliff, so I'm rushing over there so we can try and get a closer look.
Amazing. You do that, Mr. White. Share any question you have.
Are puffins related to ducks?
Ooh.
Ah, so they're related to ducks in the sense that they are all under the large family of birds, but they're not very closely related to ducks. Now, some ducks, especially marine ducks, are going to have a lot of characteristics in common with puffins, but still genetically they're not very closely related.
Yes, I'm really glad you'd mentioned that because that brings me to a topic which is convergent evolution. So a lot of different groups of birds have ended up hunting fish, living in or on water, and so you'll end up with these big paddle feet for going through the water really quickly. Sometimes you'll end up with birds that can't even fly because they spend their entire lives in the water, like penguins. But penguins, puffins, ducks, toucans, quite different groups of birds, all under the bird family, but very, very different. The other birds that puffins are related to, razorbills, murres, auks, aren't birds that a lot of people are familiar with. So I'm really glad we're getting these questions, guys. Westview School, we're going to head to you. Come on in and take us away, Miss Smith.
Why are puffins endangered?
Ooh.
Some populations of puffins are endangered. Here in the park, they're actually doing quite well. So the tendency we're seeing is slowly the population is going up in the park. There's a bit of a decline in the last few years, but they're still within the parameters of having a healthy population. So we're quite happy with the population and how it's doing so far in the park. We've got puffins on this island, on a few of the islands surrounding this one, and now more and more we're also seeing puffins a little bit further to the east in some other islands in the park.
Yeah.
So overall here they're doing really well.
I was going to say, actually, so unlike a lot of the species that we feature at Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants, puffins are actually doing really well. On a global scale, there are about 12 to 14 million Atlantic puffins, which is ridiculous. There aren't many of anything that there are millions of. If you go to Newfoundland's coast, you can literally see like 500,000 puffins nesting at once, which is crazy. So I hope everyone takes that chance because it's a really, really special part of the world. Again, from Quebec out east to Canada's east coast, some really, really neat things. I'm going to take one online, and then we're going to wrap up with Miss Lou's class. I want to make sure Amber gets to get inside, not get hyped for us. But Ali Akbar in Miss Green's class, they were curious what predators puffins have. What eats puffins? Thanks for the question, guys.
That's a really great question again. So the biggest predators of puffins are actually other marine birds. We've seen a couple of them go by. There's one right over there. That's the great black-back gull, and they're a pretty top predator. And oh, there's a puffin. We've got one. Sorry, got interrupted there. The great black-back gull. Often we're going to, well, not often, but sometimes we see them eating puffins or trying to eat puffins. So we know that they are definitely one of their main predators in this area.
Yeah, I think, instinctually, I hear myself eating a puffin, I go, oh no, but then I think that, like, I eat chicken, so it's not far off. They look like a little bird. But as we said, there's lots of them, so don't worry if a few puffins get eaten. Today, we're focusing on the good things about the Miss Lou, I'm going to head to you for one rapid question. I know we can go all the way with this. I want to make sure Amber gets inside. We're off to other broadcasts soon, but I want to say a big thank you, especially to our classes at the last one of the year. We've got 6 more shows after this, and it's been such a thrill having you all on today. Thank you so much. Miss Lou, there it is.
Close.
You actually caught that one. That was great. Miss Lou's class. Come on in, guys. Hey.
What is their lifespan?
Ooh, yes. How long do they live again?
Awesome question. They live about 20 years roughly.
Which again is an incredible time for a bird. Well, we've got a Westview School student ready with the camera, so I'm going to come to you, and then we'll wrap up after that with a big thank you and farewell. Come on in, Miss Smith. Take us away.
How old do a baby puffin need to wait to fly?
Ooh.
I love that question. That's a really good question. So they don't have to wait very long at all. So they're here for only about a month to 6 weeks with their parents before it's bye-bye, mom and dad. You're on your own. So they've got to learn in that very short amount of time how to do everything to survive. They need to learn how to be able to hunt, to get their fish. They need to learn how to be able to swim, how to fly. It's a pretty dramatic start to their life. It's pretty quick that they have to learn all those things.
Amber, I'm so glad that my mom didn't kick me out of the house when I was 6 weeks old because I would have been all by myself. So good for being able to do that. Amber, is there any last message you want to share with us about the island, the puffins, anything before we bring in our classes to say a big enthusiastic farewell?
I'm so glad you all joined us today. Now, I'm sorry we didn't get to see more puffins than we did. It is not the nicest out with quite a bit of wind, so they might be kind of hiding away more in their dens right now. But we got to see at least a couple, even if they were from far away. So we'll have to try again maybe another time to get the very nice weather to get them up nice and close to the snow. But a huge thank you for joining us today. I love all your questions, and thank you so much, Jessie, for hosting.
Thank you so much, Amber, for an enthusiastic outdoor adventurer. It means more than you know. What a great beginning to our last week of programming. To our classes, I'm going to bring you all in to say thank you and farewell to our star crew, Mr. White's class, Westview School, Miss Lou's class. Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful